well, I just am not having enough, intercourse,
Yeah, there's a
fuck that, man. Like, treat her like she's not all the pussy you're getting, even if she is, like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what works. That's not what I like or enjoy, but that's what
that's why I'm single, man.
It's like
the easy way to do that is you just dictate every single decision and just make it instantly.
Yeah, that's true.
And then that just like does it. That's how I used to hook up with girls.
Yeah. I think
because like I had no other game other than that, but I did know about this because I read that book, Double Your Dating.
Oh, nice.
And it's all about that.
And so assertiveness, confidence, and assertiveness.
Yeah, and I wasn't confident. I'm still not really confident with girls, but what you do is you just like don't give them a chance to like make any decision whatsoever. You just like if you go out to eat, you just order her meal without even asking her even ask her what the fuck she wants. Just decide and just do it, and just do that with everything. And it's like but I don't have. It's not like I had any great plan. But in the female brain, like it seems like you have some great plan and you're fucking in control.
That's fucking great. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you could pull that in any situation, any social situation, not just dating, like meetings with bosses and things like that.
And then just rip on them constantly too. That's important. But that takes a lot more skill because
you're so pretty, but you got big teeth.
Yeah, it's like
really big teeth, huh?
He called it cocky funny. That's what he called it.
You're pretty enough to be pretty, even with those big teeth.
You like say like stuff that's actually pretty mean and harsh, but you say it laughingly and say you're just joking.
Oh my god!
Or you just be sweet and be yourself, be funny, right? And then
and get no pussy.
No, check it out. And then so what you do is
hit her.
If she shows interest in you, body language, and all of that good stuff, and in conversation, if she's into you, then you get her used to doing things for her. You know what I'm saying? Even small things, dude. And then she immediately right off.
Like you get those
hey, can you
popsicles
can you hold this for me? Or hey, can you get that for me? Right? And you get her used to that fucking shit, but with positive, and that works in the workplace or in any situation.
Yeah, no,
I'm not sure I quite understand. So I'm gonna like run through a scenario with you and.
Okay.
So I'm with this girl, and so we go out to ice cream, and I get her like the astronaut pop, and I'm like, here, can you like put that in your mouth? And is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Move it in and out to like warm it up so it's softer.
Yeah, there you go, Eric.
No, I know what you're saying. Like
now shove it all the way down your throat.
I've been fucking married for so long that it's incredible. It's hard to even say like I don't know any game. I have no game. I just picked up on Heather at work, man, and I fell in love in this traditional sense of like all the now we understand the neurochemistry behind it and what happens and all of those different things. And so for me, game is the whole different idea. You know what I mean? All of it intrigues me. Like I guess I'm like an old man like that. Like I'm like I don't even know, man. Like but I know that I have to like not be responsive to females when in certain ways because I try to you're being monogamous. Like I'm not gonna fuck around or whatever. And so I won't even notice that I'm getting hit on. If I'm at the bar with Heather, she'll be like, that girl's totally hitting on you, and she doesn't care. She's cool, but
yeah, what's funny is how terrible girls are usually at hitting on guys.
Yeah, that's what I think it is too. I think they don't know how to really, I don't know how Heather knows, how my wife would know that some fucking chick is hitting on me. Well, I can't even tell. I'm an idiot.
That's something I noticed too, is like when I used to go to the bars is watching girls try to hit on guys. And they hit on guys like in the same way that a guy would hit on a girl.
Like a guy that's not good at it?
Yeah. No. Like a guy that is good at it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like for sure, but they like think, it's the same problem men have with women. Women, I'm sure they don't understand that the whole psychology and everything is different.
Yeah.
And so like the girls that are not good at like hitting on guys will kind of like try to do like the cocky funny thing with a guy, And no dude is gonna be into that shit.
Oh no! Well, unless she's looking for like a
won't even fucking realize what's going on. Like like a guy, like sometimes a guy will be like, "Damn, that girl's just a huge bitch." And when really she's really wants his dick.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's funny.
Because she doesn't understand. She knows what she's into. And so she just imagines that guys are into what she's into.
Yeah. Well, and there's that whole thing of just not accepting that both genders want the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, is that I think there's a block in a lot of the male and the female probably. If we talk they all are DTF, man. Everyone's DTF if you're in that situation, but people think the other one's not, and then step on their own dick, basically, you know, no pun intended. Like, you know what I mean? You kind of like, I don't, you know, you hesitate or whatever it is.
People
like,
could
the
be
dynamic for me is different.
more,
like,
man.
For me, it's different. Like, if I want my wife to do something, we've been together 10 years, I'm like, I'll smack you if you don't do it, and she knows. No, I'm just joking. I'm totally straight. I don't do that. I don't promote domestic violence in any sense or any form.
No.
But, you know, I always said that, you know, I won't hit a woman,
ball kick the shit.
But I'll smack a bitch.
I'll smack my shit. No.
Seriously though,
that's
I mean,
that's just
the dynamic is different. You gotta like fucking. It's all psychological plays. You know, like if you want someone, it's like Pavlov. It's like training a fucking person to acquiesce. You know what I mean? But at the same time, there's like this deep love and all that shit. You know what I mean? But really, like if you're living with someone, it's the same no matter what. You're like trying to like. Yeah, when you do this, I'm going to reward you in whatever sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what, you know, I think with most men, they hope that the woman
Positive
does
reinforcement.
that. Yeah, does it to them. You know what I mean?
Hey, we're dogs, man.
If my wife would just do that to me and positively train me, she lets me be a fucking lazy slob. And I'm like, hey, man, train me to do something, you know? Like, you're bad pet on me.
Yeah, but that involves nagging. And so, you know, I mean, some people, hey, nag me. I need to do it. No, I don't need to fucking hear shit, man.
No, she's great.
Yeah,
I don't get nagged. I think the dynamic's different for every person too. You know, even like when it comes to hitting on people, like there are situations where you might hit on a girl all night. There might be different girls, right? And it's not just a numbers game. Like it's a matter of like interaction, social interaction, being able to meld with a person in any sort of a way, like long term, short term, whatever. Like I think, you know, being cool with someone and like when you make a joke and she gets it, first of all, that might be a big deal to some people who make like random jokes or quote random shit. You know, it shows that they're on the same wavelength. You know what I mean? And if we all attract the type of person that we are, which they say the law of attraction, you know, we kind of are going to be around people that are similar to us. Well, if you're at a place with a bunch of different people, then they're attracting that type of person. That doesn't necessarily mean they're attracting each other. There's still only going to be so many people that are there attracted to you and that meld with you. So, I mean, finding that in the bar, it might be a lot of work and it seems like a numbers game, but really if you would have gone to that person right off the bat, you might have had the same luck. It might have been one for one.
I don't like picking up chicks in the bar.
Well, wherever you do
because I get too fucked up. I really do.
Yeah.
You know, usually when I go to the bar, because I don't go to the bar very often, and then it's
Club
like,
or
oh
bar,
yeah,
yeah.
everybody goes out. You know, a big group of people nowadays. You know, because I'm not really. I don't know. Bar's just a big waste of money to me.
The club and the bar, yeah, the whole scene, the whole scene
up in the club.
Meet women at a library.
Yeah.
No, what is the
Grocery store?
Yeah, is
shop.
that the fucking modern? What's the modern way? Barnes and Noble. How do you meet?
How do
people? Because I mean, seriously,
man.
I haven't. You know, I
interwebs.
met my wife at my job. You know, I was working as a kid pretty much, and I met her, and then I knew her for fucking several years before I even courted her.
I don't know, and that's kind of the problem.
Hey, now I guess you know everybody like hooks up on the internet and shit. Like you know,
that's what I was saying.
I mean, in different instances too, whether it's just hooking up,
well, like,
or
dude,
relationships, or like they wanted serious relationships or whatnot. And that's why I strike out so much because I'm fucking anti that shit.
I'm
man.
looking to finger blast some
random.
random chick. You know, on Craigslist will probably work. There's all kinds of shit on Craigslist and different apps you can get, right? That's what I was like. It scares me, the idea that what if like my wife left me, right? What if I was like cold and alone, you know what I mean? No kids, no shit. I'd be like, I wouldn't even know where to start. I'd be like that guy going to the bar looking to get pussy.
Dude,
Facebook, that's actually what Facebook is for.
Seriously?
No,
I didn't know that.
Hey, really? I had a friend that just signed up for Twitter a couple months ago, and it was fucking instant, buddy.
Yeah.
It was instant. I mean,
Really?
it was over with.
Wow.
Yeah, he was talking like 8 different chicks in like 10 in like the first 10 minutes, dude.
So what is that double standard there? There is a double standard down with that. Like, what if a chick does that? What if a chick? Does society still view him the same? Like, I don't know. These kids see things. They're all fucking enlightened, and they're starseed kids and shit. So they think, you know what I mean? Like, what's
you
the
mean
new
the polygamy?
Well, not just polygamy, but the idea of like not being in, like, because polygamy assumes that you're in a relationship with those people, right? Like, I'm talking about just the idea of the NSA, like, just fucking.
Just
fucking.
I mean?
Just fucking.
Just
like,
fucking.
Is that a thing? Is that, I mean, I know it was in high school kind of, but does that
I'm not sure I know what you're asking.
Well, has the digital age transformed the modern relationship? You know what I mean? Like, is it completely, or is it still like, you know, it always will be a physical thing. So there's always 2 people involved in it. But like, Doesn't it change when you like know that when you met your chick on some app and you're like, well, we're going to get serious. I'm like, yeah, but she still has that app on her phone and shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like she still has all the access, same exact means that she was fucking a bunch of these dudes. She still knows all them. You're friends with them. Like, you know what I mean? Your friends might have banged her even, you know, like who knows? Like how does that all, do people
I would say that, yeah, social media has changed all relationships.
Like the idea of what a relationship really is and what it, you know, I'm not saying mine's my idea of it is any more valid than another person's, but they're definitely different. The paradigms have shifted a little bit.
Well, I was thinking about net neutrality, you know, and it's like there's a chance that losing net neutrality could just destroy the internet in the United States. It'll still work in other countries, but I was thinking, you know, that might not be like the worst thing because then people would go and like actually talk to each other face to face again.
Oh,
which
maybe
people don't really do anymore.
No, you're right. That's what I'm saying. Like it used to be that. You're right. It wasn't just the bar, but there was a lot of different social gatherings and places like farmers markets, you know. That's like a place that still exists. Like
all those things still
shopping,
exist,
though.
but
That's
people don't.
Shopping.
Yeah, all those things still exist, but people don't really socialize that much.
Yeah, we don't. Even when like I know I do. I'm the guy, dude. I'll be at fucking any supermarket buying any number of things, and I will talk to the person behind me and in front of me if they're having it. You know, you can tell sometimes, like, I'll talk to some old man, he's all, gives you a grunt and a stare, and you're like, all right, well, you don't have to talk to me, man. I'm just going to talk to the guy behind me. Hey, what's up, man? What's your name? Like, I'll ask people their names and shit. Like, I'm like a 5-year-old. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know where my mom is right now, but I'm going to talk to you for a little while. Is that okay? And, you know, I noticed that people are responsive to it. I think because we crave it. It's kind of like it's a social thing. Like we're like prisoners almost. Like the touch, the idea of touch. I was looking at that the no touch ideology that in the 20s there were like kids who didn't have any hands-on, right? They had food, they had minimal nursing and minimal everything, right? And they died like by the dozens in any nursing home, any place where they kept any orphanage. Like not having like touch is a huge deal. You know what I mean? And then it was researched in the 50s and like they made huge leaps throughout, like knowing that, and prisoners experience it. You know, they talk about like a lack of touch and what it does for us. We're getting to the point to where we don't even have we have a lack of interaction. We starve for not just skin to skin touch, but like, you know, and I mean like totally platonic skin to skin touch. Like we crave that, but we also crave, I think, like you're talking that face to face, man. Where is that?
Yeah, well, I think what you're talking about, in my opinion, is a control mechanism because, well, it's like sex, you know. You can say touch or sex. I'm just gonna go with sex because it's an easier way to describe what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
So like the church makes it immoral to like have sex outside of marriage, and then like you have to get married through the church,
or
and
the
so
state,
now the church has a monopoly on sex. And so they can control people by allowing them to get married or not, you know, or people need sex, and the only way they can get it is through a church-approved marriage. You know? And touch is the same thing. People need touch, and if you make it a society where it's generally not allowed, then you can control the people that are allowed, that have the exception, have control. You know, power.
We're all so touch-starved that any good exposure that you're right. There's a certain amount of control that can be like, think about your soldier that doesn't get any, prior to him becoming a soldier. And then like he gets that physical contact, even through wrestling, through whatever kind of things they're doing, you know what I mean? Like, and just the control, you're right. I mean, it's definitely a decent thought there. And the idea of being able to just control one more aspect of our lives, you know, but that interaction, I think it's gone to that point to where face to face is gone too. You know what I mean? We're craving that. Like you notice it. Like when you have platonic interactions with people, they kind of like it. Anyone likes it, you know, for the most part. Even your cantankerous old cunts, and you know. I
don't know. People are strange, man. People are strange. Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way. You know what I'm saying? I'm gregarious to everybody. I try to talk to everybody and say hi and try to uplift. You know, just be uplifting, generally. And people. Sometimes they look at you like you're a fucking weirdo, man. Like, honestly, like, who's this fucking weirdo?
Yeah.
You know, just someone who's completely miserable who, I don't know, just has a problem interacting.
But then you can take that to another extreme too, and there's the people that touch too much. Have you ever known somebody like that?
Oh, yeah.
Where like every interaction is
that's me.
Nah, not even, dude. I've known
I'm not
so
bad,
much worse than you, like.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm very affectionate.
It's
and
not bad.
I express my gratitude and my love for things and people around me all the time. I try to always be open about it. But
yeah, I knew a guy in college that was like,
was he in your bubble?
He would just meet a random person and want to be like hugging them and stuff, and
yeah,
it'd creep the shit out of people.
I'll give hugs to people if I meet them in a formal, more than an acquaintance situation. Like you're a close friend to my cousin or something. I'm gonna hang out with you for the next day. Like
you're a close friend to my cousin.
I'll give you a hug. You know what I mean? Like, hey, it's nice to meet you. You know what I'm saying? Like, but that doesn't mean like I'm gonna fucking go hug a bunch of strangers and shit. That's what I'm saying though. The people that do that are probably extremely touch starved, right? They have the touch starvation.
Yeah,
thing going,
I mean,
like,
maybe.
So they need more platonic interaction. Like, but I mean, we all know those people too that.
Or they're trying to leverage that power.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in touch too. Leverage the power of the touch. Yeah, you're right. Like I try to, and I think that could be used for good and bad. But most people that would understand it would try to leverage it in a negative way, I guess. I know for me, I would try to always impart positivity on anyone. I always do, you know what I mean? So how does that, I mean, that would tie in with fucking, I don't know, like bosses that touch too much and things like that, right?
That's a great example of using that as a power
right?
thing.
Like, yeah, you come and rub someone's shoulders up behind their desk and you just creep them the fuck out, but there's nothing they can really do because you're not doing anything.
That's
really.
100% a power thing right there.
Yeah, yeah. But if we weren't so touch starved, if it wasn't so weird, it wouldn't have as much of an effect and it wouldn't make that creepy fucker do it. Like that, you know, right? Yeah. Like, so that's where it's the idea of as a society, if we were just more open with more touchy feely with each other, not in a creepy way, but like platonic, like we've limited it to a handshake with just the hand. Like even 2,000 years ago, the typical handshake went all the way up the forearm. Just that general interaction. You grab somebody else's whole forearm with your hand, you know what I mean? To shake their hand back in the day. And a lot of times it would include a colliding of the chests, you know what I mean? And maybe an arm over the side, like, you know, a hug, like kind of a hug. Like that's what we do that. There are a lot of places that, but even the exclusion of it can be a control mechanism. Like you think about groups of people that will refuse to hug somebody, even though they're hugging everyone else around you. That exclusion could be a huge control too. Like if you know, if for instance, if you bring someone into a family setting and everybody hugs and then they don't hug you. Like it shows, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you don't really like me or I smell bad today. Like, I'm sorry. Sorry for either of them. I'm not really sorry. Sorry if I smell bad. Not if you don't like me. You can fuck off if you don't like me. I'm pretty likable. I think we're all pretty likable. Right?
We're pretty cool.
Not to toot our own fucking horns or anything.
Right. I'm going to...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you think? You think sugar is a drug? I think.
Yes.
I seem to think I equate it with a drug most of the time. In my mind, I seem to think that it's I don't know. Yeah, it has dietary value. Of course, you get carbs and all that from it, right? The simple glutamate or whatever, the simple glucose. But there is definitely an effect, right? And an addiction factor that goes hand in hand with constant intake. Even just the standard irritability that people have when you don't fucking have it. Like, don't get your sugar fix when you have a normal standard intake, right? I mean, people get moody. I know it's just like caffeine or anything else. An argument my buddy was saying. I mean, and I was going a little far, maybe trying to equate sugar to, you know, the other stimulants, hardcore stimulants, you know, and I don't think I'm that far off. I think that hardcore stimulants lack the nutritional value of sugar, but they don't lack the effects that they cause on your brain. You know, the sudden release of dopamine, the cravings that go hand in hand with dopamine release from whatever source it is. I don't care what it is you're doing. If you have a dopamine release from that activity, you're going to eventually crave that activity, right?
Yeah, because you know what happens? It's called downregulation of dopamine receptors.
Nice. So we know, I mean, that happens we know that sugar does that. I mean, I don't know what my source is here, but I'm sure if we looked it up anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We'll know that sugar is, you know, there's that release of dopamine. That's the sugar high and the sugar rush. We even call it a sugar rush, a sugar high. We know that it exists, and there's still argument out there that it's not a drug comparable to other stimulants. The one argument I had from a friend was that, well, you can't get enough of it to kill you in one sitting. I was like, oh, like aspirin or Tylenol? You know? Like, I was like, that's not a good argument. The LD50, the amount, so what? Regulate the dosage on these other stimulants, and I think you'll have similar effects to the proper dosage of sugar or caffeine.
Yeah, it's a very gray thin line between a food and a drug, because eating any kind of food is going to have biochemical effects, and so it's just a judgment call of degree.
The degree of whether, and that's where, like, I mean, I get it if you're talking about hardcore stimulants, but even the government has proven, right? Any government that's done any testing on, say, crystal methamphetamine in particular, they've tested it and they show an increase in mental acuity with the proper dosage. The proper dosage.
Well,
I'm not advocating the use at all, but I'm stating that there are, in the proper dose, the relatable dose, there's going to be an increase in your abilities. Your mental acuity, your perception, everything goes up.
Like caffeine's like the perfect example of that.
Yeah, caffeine does it. And I get, you can't get enough of that in your system all at once to kill you, but that doesn't negate the value of it, you know what I mean, or potential value.
Well, there's no regulation on it. They don't ask for your ID when you buy a bag of sugar, or you buy some candy.
Yeah, because it's assumed that it just has dietary value.
Yeah. And
there's not a drug component with this refined product.
And it's cheap as shit. And it's cheap as shit.
I think we have to discuss we need to compare it with other drugs. So I mean, caffeine's definitely considered a drug, right? Does anybody think caffeine isn't a drug?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to argue that it's not.
Right. And so the question is sugar an equal or greater degree to caffeine? And I would say it's a greater degree. It's more of a drug than caffeine.
Oh, I would agree. You can see it if you have a kid that gets a cup of coffee, they're going to drink that coffee and maybe feel a rush, but it's not the same. They're not going to, when you drink a sweet anything, you give that kid straight sugar water and they'll be bouncing off the walls. They'll have a reaction that is so similar to a fucking stimulant junkie of any sort. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the reason that I would put sugar as a more serious drug than caffeine is because it has a longer half-life, is what I would say. And so, it's like, I'd say that withdrawing from sugar is similar to withdrawing from caffeine, but the difference is that the withdrawal will last longer with sugar.
Yeah, the come down is worse and you're crashing out hard. Yeah, and anyone does it. We all do it. I think you get more immune to it, right, as we get older, because it's like a junkie. We have had it so much that this amount doesn't really affect us as much anymore, not in the drug sense, right? I mean,
and I think sugar is definitely way worse for you than caffeine.
Yeah, there's a good argument there.
Sugar, the white death.
Well, it's solid carbs too. Caffeine doesn't really have dietary value.
That's what I'm saying.
Other than being a stimulant.
Yeah, its dietary value is also something that needs to be regulated in a sense. Personally, I think that's what my argument was with this guy was that teaching our kids about things is a smarter way to go about it. Teach them. Don't just say okay, so when you've told them that all these things are bad, don't do these things, but then they see people doing them, there's always going to be that curiosity. Satiate that curiosity with information. Teach them, there's a use, man. The hardest drug you can think of, there's probably a dosage and a proper use and a proper time and place that you're never going to encounter, so you don't ever need it. This is what the worst things are. I mean, we tell them don't do it because you're going to end up like that junkie you just saw on the street corner or whatever.
The whole character of Mr. Mackey on South Park is a joke about that.
Yeah.
It's because, the people that teach kids not to do drugs at school just ruin their own credibility because they're not specific enough.
Yeah, there's not enough.
Drugs are bad, okay?
Exactly. It's so generic and so vague, and there's no
And so any credit, I mean, they're right. In general, they're right. I mean,
but they're right. They're not addressing the drugs that they don't.
They're so vague that they just don't have any credibility.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, I mean, they don't address sugar. They don't address caffeine. And you'll get nicotine programs. They don't want you to smoke and everything, but they don't really address them in the same way. They all need to be less vilified, first of all. I think that's something that, I think you would have, so far you can see in countries that have legalization that the rate of users doesn't really, it might balloon for a second, post-legalization or something, but it doesn't really skyrocket. Hardcore drugs pretty much are used the same. So, amongst all populations,
in my opinion, the reason it's like that is because of the alcohol industry. Because if they were actually honest and went into the specifics of just all the drugs and So this is the upside, this is the downside.
And
you
the
know?
reality of the
if you
upsides
get
and
addicted to
downsides.
this is how addictive it is,
Yep.
and this is what you're going to have to go through to get off of it. If they actually did that in an honest way at school, you'd see that alcohol is among some of the worst.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
alcohol is a huge industry in the United States, and they would never, their lobby and those that make money and have jobs because of the alcohol industry would never allow schools to be honest about drugs.
Yeah. I think that it's that conditioning too, right? People haven't been honest about drugs for so long now that for 3 generations, since the 30s, you know, right? It started in the turn of the century with prohibition, all of that. So for 110 years, 120 years, we've been like dishonest with ourselves about it to the point of, yeah, we're passing on what we think is the truth of the matter, but we're kind of continuing to push this paradigm that all drugs are bad except the ones that we say are not bad.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and also the pharmaceutical industry as well.
Yeah, all the powers that be, all the people that are drugs, that push drugs that don't want to be classified as drugs.
They never tell you anything about the drugs your doctor gives you in DARE, and some of those are the most dangerous. I mean, Oxycontin, for example.
Yeah, well, dude, that's right. Fentanyl. Like I was watching that fucking Netflix, the drugs documentary or whatever. You know what I mean? And you're watching this guy talk about how these addicts want to OD. They want to have a product so strong they're going to OD. So he puts a little too much fentanyl in there. Like his dealer tests it and it's fine. So he adds more and then doesn't test it and sells it. And there's a guy who ODs. He goes to the hospital. He's fine. He's back. His product skyrockets and he sells more of it because a guy OD'd. And everyone knows now that shit's super pure, man. It's super strong. So you don't need, dude, that wouldn't happen if it was regulated with information too. If we gave information to people and then put the same money that we put towards fighting that guy that we never catch, which they never catch this guy, of course, you know, they document it from both sides. They document it from the cops and from the drug dealers. And they have they documentary these drug dealers in these cities, and I think they're praying the whole time, like, I hope our cops run into the guys we're documenting with the drugs. You know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't really happen though. So these guys, and even if it does, they're just replaced.
Wait,
like,
what are you?
I'm advocating.
You're talking about a TV show or something?
Yeah. It's this documentary on Netflix that drugs.
Do you know the name of it?
I believe it's Drugs is what it's called. Drugs Incorporated, maybe.
That is such a generic name; it loses all credibility.
I know, but it's and it covers a lot of different drugs and different, like, people making crack and shit. It shows you like people making this shit, you know, and it's crazy. But to me, it's like you're not going to stop these motherfuckers from doing it. The only way you're going to stop it is to give information to the kids, to everybody, to people, and then provide for clean, sterile environments for them to purchase the same drugs at a better price with a proper dosage that's always proper. Like, the reason we have so many addicts is because the dealers are fucking cutting it with fentanyl. They're heroin with fentanyl and killing people.
Well, and the people and what caused those people to become addicts in the first place
is the fucking pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, the whole pharmaceutical industry is what caused it, and that's the case for most of these addicts on the show. Even they're saying, yeah, well, I had insurance that covered my injury for 2 years, got me addicted to pain pills, and the insurance stopped one day, and the addiction didn't.
Yeah, and then the H is fucking cheaper.
Yeah, well, so it's so much, and
it's more potent.
And they're still paying, like, that's the thing. Like,
and it's actually like safer, like than Oxy.
For the most part, like,
the only thing that's not safer about it is that, you know, you don't know the dose as much.
Exactly. You don't have sterile needles. You don't have, like, just the general things that you need when you're sticking a needle in your veins, man, to avoid disease. And I'm not saying, like, I understand the idea of, like, they're drug addicts, they made bad choices and all that, but a lot of times like, people are like, oh, well, marijuana is the gateway drug. I'm like, no, man, gateway drugs start with coffee. You see your caffeine. You see your parents drinking sugar. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
we are so fucking warped with
drug.
Exactly. We have sugar, we have caffeine, we have your parents smoking, we have beer and alcohol and shit that's all accepted. And then we blame the first drug that is the most innocuous out of all of them. Marijuana is the one that people schedule one for so long and all that. So it's automatically the gateway because it's like, it's not as bad flat out, you know, as the other drugs, but it is the one they've made illegal. But it's all social lines.
It's demonized for 2 reasons. Well, it's demonized for one reason. The pharmaceutical industry, 2 reasons. So the pharmaceutical industry can't profit off of marijuana.
Yeah.
And that's number 1. And number 2 is it's in direct competition with alcohol.
Number 1, it's the healing of the nations.
No,
number one reason why is because it's the healing of the nations.
It is the healing.
It is the greatest shit, man.
And the reason,
smoke some weed, people. Smoke some weed.
The reason the pharmaceutical industry can't make profit off of it is because they can't patent it and anybody can grow it.
Yeah.
And also it's not addictive.
Well, and it is that synergistic healing that you get with it. It's not just like people overlook the idea of feeling better when you're ailing, man. Fuck, I smoked a bowl and I feel better. That is going to help your healing so much. I don't care what it like. I knew a guy who had cancer. He had lymphoma and he beat it, and he used weed towards the end of it a little bit because the chemo got so fucking bad. Like this dude was super healthy and the chemo just ate him up. You know what I mean? Well, he like smoked a bowl towards the end and was like, holy shit, man, I just feel, I'm not saying that he made it because he smoked weed, but I definitely know that while he was in his worst of worst positions he's ever been in his life, it helped him to feel better and it made his life more enjoyable. The healing power in that is so underrated.
Yeah, and it's like you gotta weigh the side effects and the benefits, right? And it's almost like a non-issue with weed because whether or not it has many benefits, the side effects are so slim and not at all severe that it doesn't, no matter what, it's a win.
It is, exactly. Like, you're going to kill brain cells, you're going to develop some long-term psychosis, whatever.
That's bullshit. That is such bullshit. None of that is true.
No, they like that Super Jaime, he had a higher mental acuity, you know what I mean, when he smoked weed after 30 days as a non-smoker, smoked for 30 days straight, and the same test he took before, he did better on when he was super high.
It comes down to what you were just talking about, and that is dopamine, right? Yeah. That is where drugs fuck people up, is if your brain is constantly releasing large amounts of dopamine, then your body downregulates dopamine receptors.
Okay.
And at that point, you are fucked.
Yeah, because you can't get that same fix.
Because your brain will not it takes a long time to upregulate those receptors. Yeah. And if your body does, because it's not just about the amount of dopamine in your system. It's about how many dopamine receptors you have and also how much dopamine is in your system. And so if your body downregulates dopamine receptors,
it doesn't matter how much is
if you stop taking the drug that's causing all the dopamine to be released, you are fucked.
Yeah.
And your body can't fix it immediately. And it's dependent on the drug you're taking, And the longer the half-life of the drug is, the worse off you are. Because, the longer it's going to take for your body to get your dopamine receptors back up. And in that time, if you're not, the only way to get your body to grow new dopamine receptors is to stop taking the drug. But then you're in the situation where you have not enough dopamine in your system and you're in fucking hell.
Yeah, you're in mental hell.
And depending on how severe, you're in possibly a life-threatening situation.
Yeah. So that's why junkies just remain junkies because of that reason. They get like a little taste of what you're just talking about. And they're like,
truly looking out for them. That's the biggest thing,
but
right?
See,
Nobody's really looking out for a junkie, man. Like, there's no organization that they can go to and say, look, here, check this out. I've been doing a whole cap. This is what I've been doing. I've been busting a whole cap in my fucking veins. So check out, and then they'll look at it and go, holy shit, that's how much you've been doing? Well, look, we're going to provide you with this. How much have you been paying? You know what I mean? And they're going to sell, like, it would lessen the severity of the ODs that occur, and the information that we spread about it would lessen the people that want to do it. They would be able to, like, it's not like, the fact is, any organization that tries to present information to the youth, they always do it in a bad way. They do it in a way that is just like the DARE program that gets overlooked because half the kids you're talking to already have exposure to like marijuana or other drugs that they already know. Well, it's not that bad. You're telling me that anyone who does X drug is going to I've watched my parents do that for the last couple of years and they're not that bad, or whatever it is. They're going to justify these things and it discredits themselves, like you were saying. So there needs to be the real information. Like, look, man, people that do this, like I knew a guy that OD'd and the words that he would have said would have been, I wish you could feel how good this feels, man. That's what he was saying. He in his dying words, that's what there is a certain illness to it that you want to fucking experience the highest of the highs. And it is a feeling unlike anything that you're ever going to feel, but it's not worth it because look, man, this is what it does. This is what the dependency, like really given true information about it and why people do drugs in the first place. What I think we're warped about that. Our whole society is so fucking warped. Like, the entheogenic possibility is just thrown out the window because it's not scientific. So we can't teach anything to our kids. It's not completely scientific. So we can't. What the fuck, man? There's just this gap in real life applicable knowledge.
Because it's a conflict of interest. Because it's in the financial interests of the pharmaceutical industry and the alcohol industry that correct information is not taught to kids in school, and they have lots of money and they have huge lobbies that make the code that the people at school, the teachers or whoever's doing drug education has to follow. They make the curriculum.
Yep.
And so
can't even discuss it.
You can't
dare
to keep a kid off drugs. Oh man, that's just awful though.
To keep a kid
I mean, I feel like it didn't help me in my youth. Dare didn't help me. It did not present me with the right information for what I was faced with in college. You know what I'm saying? Like, and high school even. Like, high school was a little bit less, you know, but fuck, once college hit, that whole era, I was like, Jesus, man, first of all, there's a lot more out there than I ever dreamed. People that were into drugs in the early 2000s were introducing some fucking crazy. You're like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is like the rave drugs were, LSD was coming back. Everything was coming back around then. You know what I mean? Like, at least for me, you know, like all the mush. I mean, all of that shit was just, there was no real information presented about it. Like,
yeah, but a lot of those drugs are not even that bad.
That's what I'm saying. Well, I tried some that were bad. I'd rather not
but it's like the
scare away our listeners.
The opiates, you know? It's the opiates and the benzos.
Yeah, no,
and the alcohol.
That's what I'm saying, dude. I speedballed, man. I mean, I'll get dirty with it. You know, I'll tell you. I straight took. It wasn't heroin, but I took Oxycontins. I would snort them, and then I would fucking smoke crystal methamphetamine. Like straight, you know what I mean? In the same breath, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, I would, you know, like rail one up, and it was fucked up, man. And it was all because I didn't really have any real information. All of the information I had been taught was discredited immediately. You know what I mean? And then I didn't really have the wherewithal to go seek this information out. I was just presented with a situation where these people were doing, and I didn't do it for long. I wasn't like an addict. I did it and like realized how fucked up it was and kind of got out of that. So it wasn't like wasn't close friends or anything that I was doing it with. It was, you know, it was college, man. I was like hanging out with people I didn't know, driving a couple hours outside of town and shit, new place and all that shit. Before I was 20, I'm in my 30s now. So it's been over a decade. But I feel like if I would have had the right information, I could have like maybe partaken in a couple of things that I shouldn't have and done some vice-like things and actually had a good time. I didn't have a good time on any of those drugs. I literally clammed up and was fucking, I would take too much and I would pass out. It was weird. It was just a weird, there was no, I think I was so curious, but I didn't have any real information about it. So I did the wrong thing. And I think a lot of people in my situations would be sucked into a life that they would regret. They would live their life in rue. They would just, so I don't advocate using it. I think it's a very, very bad decision, but I think that there's a place for it. Like in war, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, there should be morphine packs on every soldier so you can stick your dying buddy with a morphine pack. There should be crystal meth for a guy who, when he's in a firefight in Iraq or in some fucking part of the world, he could be like, bam, he takes a pack of this shit and puts it in his mouth and he's on a stimulant that is the right dose for what he's engaging in. It's going to make him a better soldier, or it's going to make you like it's stimulants have been used forever. I mean, if we can, ephedra and all those things have been found in plants and they've always been used to make people better at what they do. Like you get into the argument with stimulants and fighting. Like I'm telling you what, you have two guys fight and then you put both of them on some sort of stimulant and have them fight. And like, it's going to be a better fight, man. Like it's what we're all after, that blood and carnage, you know, if that's what, not to take away from the topic of like, and you're right though, but it starts young. It starts with sugar and people they're so misinformed that's what I realized around the same time I was doing stuff I shouldn't be doing. Sugar is a drug too, man. Like coffee is a drug. I'm starting to realize that all these things are drugs. So now they're all painted black and white, drugs and not drugs.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I didn't have this scale.
The word drugs is so ambiguous anyway.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's, to me in my mind, there's really two categories of drugs. There's you know, the dopamine type drugs, that's one category, and that's the shit I absolutely stay away from under any circumstance. But then there's tons of other drugs, and you know, that are a lot less risky in the addiction sense.
Exactly. Well,
but that doesn't mean you
addicting.
can't like take. Well, yeah, but I mean that's
hardcore stimulants. Anyways.
Stimulants are dopamine drugs too.
Yeah,
I mean, my exception is caffeine, right?
Yeah.
And so with caffeine, the nice thing about it is it's so short, you know. So it's like I can stop whenever I want. No, just
exactly.
With caffeine, you got to go through withdrawal, but it's like a few days.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I'll feel groggy for a day if I forget to drink coffee, my morning coffee.
I want some coffee right now.
And then, but not.
And you're not
really.
Coffee withdrawal is not going to cause you to go into seizures and die.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what the argument that my buddy was making when I was comparing. Hardcore stimulants to sugar in the sense that they're all refined in a laboratory fucking fashion. You know what I mean? They all have this weird like white powdery appearance that came from a plant. I guess except for meth, like the stimulants in crack. Like crack is a bit whatever. Like, and you guys make the good point that withdrawals from them are a lot more severe and they are hardcore. But like I've argued that it's all dosage and it's all understanding and knowledge. Like. Let people make decisions. I'm such a libertarian too. I don't really believe that. I believe information is the key to people making the right decisions, regardless of what should be. Because, like we all know, like heroin shouldn't be out there for people to just get, but it is. It's a reality of the world.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I agree with you. I mean, I think all drugs should be legal for sure.
Yeah. It would help people that want to help people too. If I wanted to, like, how am I going to get heroin for people that are junkies if I want to start an organization and help them?
The problem that comes in with like that libertarian way of thinking though is like, all right, obviously all drugs should be legal. That's been shown time after time. Decriminalization is super effective and it's really helpful for addicts, for people, for everybody, for the whole society. But, in the United States, we have this problem where special interests spread disinformation about the drugs they push. So then, all libertarianism is built on top of the idea of the non-aggression principle. So if a corporation is lying about the effects of their drug that they're pushing on people, at what point is that aggression?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's that idea that lying to the point of affecting social views and creating distruths, untruths that permeate society. Like, I don't know. I think there should be some. There's no way to hold them accountable is the problem.
Right.
There's no way to even measure the effect of their disinformation campaigns. You know what I mean? Because
and so
it permeates even the people trying to push this side of the argument. Like, well, I believe this, but, we have these regulations and these people in place. Like, no, they're big, powerful industries that regulate our thought. And that's the problem with it to me. Like, they are indictable to me, 100%. Like,
and if you're a libertarian, then you have to like address this. And I am a libertarian. And
yeah, but what do we use now?
But there is a problem. Like if we go to a libertarian way of doing things, then we have this problem where these corporations like the alcohol industry and the pharmaceutical industry are already violating the non-aggression principle.
Yeah, the thing is, if we went to the libertarian full on, then it would be legal. They can spread all the disinformation they want, just like MAD could go and spread. And I'm not ostracizing Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I'm just saying that there could be a skewing of statistics and facts just for your point of view. All you fucking want. You're still not going to stop me from going to the bar and getting drunk. You know what I mean? You can talk about, I'm not going to drive home drunk or anything. I'm not saying that. But any organization could be there and they can have their voice, but it shouldn't be the fucking rule of the land. If it's, like you say, non-aggression principle, if it doesn't harm another person, the direct action itself, then it's no one's fucking business, right? I mean, that's kind of, so if it was legal, if everything was like people that wanted to help addicts could say, well, I'm going to set up a clinic and I'm going to find out these people are going to be able to get the same drug they're getting on the street for cheaper from me. And I'm not going to make a profit on it because I'm going to literally sell it to them for what I'm able to get it legally for. You know what I mean? And then I can go to Afghanistan and buy some fucking shit from a poppy farmer or whatever. You know what I mean? Go all the way. It'd be legal. If it was legal, we could anybody that had the idea of helping could do that. Even the pharmaceutical industries themselves would be less constrained to go and create programs for people that they fucked over in the first place.
I believe those corporations or those companies too wouldn't be violating the NAP. That's a personal decision for those people to consume their product. And if you do it in moderation, then it's not.
Well, the idea is helping them because
it's not. They're lying to the people.
Yeah. No, the idea of a help
fooling
clinic,
them.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's what we're so socially fucking brainwashed that none of this shit's even possible because the masses think it's this way, and then they push once they have a lobbyist push a law, right? It's in the social. Everyone has this paradigm they've been brainwashed.
If you
with.
lie to somebody and that lie leads to bodily injury for that person, then that's aggression, is it not?
Yes, it is. Exactly.
And that's so isn't that exactly what the pharmaceutical industry is doing, and also the alcohol industry?
Yeah. But it's still indirect, right? Isn't it? That's what it is. They channel it through so many different avenues.
They channel it through the government.
Yeah, and then they have lobbyists. They have that's where all of this shit is getting pushed all the time. So it's kind of crazy, man. Like just the fact that it all stems from misinformation. To me, all of these problems stem, even the diabetes. If we really looked at the main issues, the things that we put in our body, like as more than just nutritional supplements or anything, they all have a nootropic effect, or they have a stimulating effect, or they have a whatever. They're drugs, and they have uses and misuses, and some of them have more room for error in their misuse. Caffeine has more room for. You can take too much caffeine and you're not too fucked up. You know what I mean? Too much weed, whatever. Like you take too much. I fucked
around and got a triple double today, dude. I'm three doubles deep today, dude. And I feel great. I actually want another fucking coffee. It's 8 o'clock.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm scared to do that, but
do it.
Do it. I'll fucks with you.
It's like you remember that episode of Beavis and Butthead?
Yes.
Where they just drink a bunch of coffee.
Oh, dude, I love that show.
It's been a long time.
It's hard to watch it in the same mindset that I had when I first saw it, though. Isn't that the thing when you go back to watch an old show, man? Like trying to watch it.
It's so different now.
It's so different,
but it's fucking funny.
Like, okay, I can remember being a kid and the scene. One of the first times I ever saw Beavis hump the corner of the couch. I fucking rolled. I laughed for like 2 weeks, dude. I'd be sitting in class and just start laughing, uncontrollably laughing. You know what I mean? Like, I was like 10 years old then. It's really hard to get back to that mindset. It's just not as funny today when I watch it. You know what I mean? Like,
you know what show's really funny is Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah,
that show is fucking hilarious.
I bought the first 2 seasons last Christmas for the kids. The DVDs are already destroyed. It's great. No, I mean, we have it somewhere, but. Yeah, they were one of those shows that was fucking too risque, right, for its time. They wouldn't really. People didn't. The people at whatever they were, wherever they were being produced, didn't. Nickelodeon didn't like it, man. They were uncool with how. It's fucking weird. Some of this shit's crazy.
What if it was just marketing and they pretended to be not comfortable with it so that people watched it?
Yeah, you never know. I mean. Or that could have been something that the people, the creators, were like, no, well, they fucked us. They said it's too risque for them, and then breached their own contract. You never know, man. Hollywood's crazy. It's a crazy, crazy world.
So the last topic was pretty heavy, and so I think I want to try to talk about a lighter topic, and that topic is UFOs.
UFOs.
So I wish we had the X-Files music right now.
Blah 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 blah.
So, it's been the past few weeks have been pretty interesting on that front.
Yeah, there was the launch, right?
Well, there was the biggest news was this New York Times article, and I'm not even going to go into too much depth on it because there's just a huge amount of background that's necessary to understand what's going on or even come close to understanding it. But what it comes down to is some big government people are pretty much coming out and saying the U.S. military, researches UFOs and they're a thing and we don't know what they are, is what they're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that happened. And then also recently there's this crazy... And I'm just bringing this up because I personally witnessed this. There was what they're saying is a SpaceX launch out of Southern California, and it was interesting because it just left this ridiculous light show in the sky. Is really wild, and I've seen lots of rocket launches that are launched out of Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is near where we live, and. They don't really look anything like what I saw a week ago today.
No.
And now that being said, there were what I saw in the sky definitely had some characteristics of that you see in a rocket launch for sure. But at the same time, there was a lot of bizarre stuff going on. There were 2 distinct, very, very bright lights. There was a huge bright vapor trail that lit up the whole sky. It was seen, I don't know how far and wide it was seen, but it was seen as at least as far as Arizona and Nevada,
and
also Oregon.
Is that something that you typically have with just a regular rocket launch? Like
I don't know. I
mean, that's what I wonder about. What were the dates announced? I mean, was it really planned? Did they really? I mean, has it been known for months and weeks that we're going to be doing this? It should be a big deal,
so,
right?
Yes.
Because it's the relaunch of the Falcon 9, right? So they're putting it back into space. Is that?
Yeah. Well, it's the way it works is there's like multiple stages, and the biggest stage, the first stage, it comes back down to Earth and they reuse it.
Yeah, and that's a huge deal. The reusable.
And so there was
craft.
like two very distinct bright lights, and what they're saying, what Elon Musk is saying, is that this was a SpaceX launch, and one of the bright lights was the second stage, and it can't return to Earth.
Yeah, and would that be a new feature? I mean, that's the thing. There definitely was something. Even the pictures, what I'm looking at, doesn't look like anything I've ever seen in regards to normal space launch. So
the closest, what it looked like to me, and while I saw it, and what crossed my mind, was what it looked most like is a totally failed rocket launch.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's kind of reminiscent
because
of that.
There was like stuff was going all over the place. I mean, there was like lights and stuff falling off of it. I mean, it wasn't following like a straight trajectory.
And the sheer intensity, you just hear people talk about it. If it was a normal occurrence with a normal rocket, then it would be normal. People would have seen it.
Right.
Oh, that's just a rocket.
Right, and that's my main question about this is why was this one so different? Because they launch SpaceX rockets all the time, and yet this time it was this crazy thing, and lots of people in Los Angeles were freaking out. Like, it was a big thing.
Yeah, social media.
There was tons of people just dismissing everything people were saying on the internet, saying, "Oh, it's just a SpaceX launch. It's no big deal," which may be true, but I mean, why this time was it so crazy?
Exactly, and then how hard would it be? I mean, when we can always Occam's razor onto the idea that it's just a launch. It's the same old thing that it should have been. Everything went to plan. But there's always a question like these are big, powerful organizations. And we know that they could have something else, going on. I mean, something else to hide, something. How do we really know what the fuck we saw? It was different enough to beg those questions. Like,
right.
Why was it so different?
It just, the dismissive attitude of the debunkers is just gets on my nerves.
Pretty much with any theory, it's that settled science argument. Well, it's settled science. Why are we even discussing this? That's an irritating argument that you get from any side.
Yeah, that theory doesn't fit our narrative, so
it doesn't fit my world paradigm, and I can't fathom changing that even a little bit.
Yeah, and then the New York Times article, that was a huge deal.
Well, people will try to misconstrue what they're trying to say, right? I mean, oh no, that's not what all they were trying to say is that we're researching it and then we're putting money towards it. That's kind of what I haven't done a lot of research on that, but it seems like that's people's argument is that it's a program that they were just letting us know about, but it's not like they have fucking seen shit and they're admitting that they don't know what the fuck they're seeing, man. It's a big deal, right? I mean, it's a senator coming out and talking about how he's given money to these people or this guy, whoever it is, to fucking...
Senator Harry Reid is the senator.
Yeah, and he's given money to these guys or this organization to
black budget money.
It's
right,
exactly,
right.
They're admitting to the fact that it's off the books money. Well, fuck, and then it's such a small amount that it's well... None of it makes sense. All of it is so misleading and so you'll run in circles trying to understand it.
I think my personal opinion on it is the most important part of it is the fact that the mainstream media has done a complete 180 on their stance on UFOs.
Yeah, what's the deal there?
For decades, the mainstream media, it's been a funny joke, and anything UFOs has been dismissed and laughed at.
Oh, discredited.
And then overnight, every single mainstream media, from BBC to CNN to New York Times to every single mainstream source, not just in the United States as well. I mean, when I'm talking BBC and stuff and other countries, totally flip from UFOs, what a bunch of bullshit, to hey everybody, listen, UFOs are real. Come on.
Yeah.
And they don't. And the funny thing is that they're bringing, not very solid evidence But they're definitely trying to push UFOs.
Yeah, what's the agenda? Are they trying to soften us up for it?
Are they distracting?
Is it just another distraction? I mean,
it seems like it. It's one of these situations where we, as the public, at this point, just don't have enough information to know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, we're running circles, like I was saying, trying to figure out what the fuck what point are you guys trying to make here? Like, to flip 180, to give us this information. We have black budget money going into a project, $22 million going into research UFOs, like. And then they're so vague with their explanation of what they consider a UFO, what they've discovered, what.
Right. The article talked about recovering physical material and storing it in warehouses in Las Vegas.
Yeah. That's Area 51 right there, right? I mean, maybe it's so right in front of our face too that it's laughable, like that, like the fucking Roswell crash in Area 51 and all this shit that's been around forever, like. But it's all real. It's right in front of our face, and they're just laughing at us like, well, but what, like you're asking that question, what is the driving force? What's the point in trying to make it socially acceptable now? Chess
pieces are moving behind the scenes, but we don't have any way of knowing what the end game is.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the plot is typically nefarious. We all agree that. I always try to be benevolent, and maybe they're trying to help us, but we can all agree that there's probably a power play of some sort.
I see it similar to like Game of Thrones. There's factions within the elite classes, and
that would make sense that some have a desire to maybe give us that little bit of information.
Because this faction that's pushing UFOs is definitely not definitely. I don't want to say definitely. This faction is seemingly not the same faction as Trump is a member of, right?
Yeah.
This is the Hillary Clinton faction that's pushing the UFOs right now.
So what is the drive, Is it, a distraction, like you were saying, DJ, makes sense. I mean, just one more little thing and people are into it, so we can, whatever the people are into, I don't care what it is, whatever time frame we're talking about, the government will try to use that interest to divert attention.
Maybe they see that people are just super into ancient aliens and they're like,
we want a piece of that.
And they're like, okay, well, we're going to do some super nefarious shit right now. And how can we distract?
Yeah, maybe it's a ploy to get more black market money. They're going, look, man, the people are interested. If we can,
Yeah, it's lines up really well with the whole problem, reaction, solution scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the litmus test for this will be, will a solution to the problem of UFOs be presented to us, the general public?
Yeah. Well, for them, the problem is probably more, I need money, and I know a guy who can get me money on the black budget, to research something that I'm loosely affiliated with, right? For them, the problem, reaction, all that, they're like, well, I need money, so we need to create a problem where I get a reaction that gets me money.
Yeah, a reaction from the public.
From the public, yeah. They're trying to elicit, like, interest in the public, and the public is going to say, well, we need to more research on this. And then Senator Harry Reid gets to throw another $40 million or double whatever he was throwing last time.
But it's such small potatoes.
It is small potatoes, but not for one small guy. You know what I mean? That's where it's easy for them.
I don't think like a nationwide disinformation campaign is warranted for a 10, 20, 30, $50 million. It's not enough money.
You know what I think? I think those aliens need some freedom.
Well, what about the idea that with the black budget, they could just be telling you it's 22 million. They could be 220, or it could be, 200,
yeah, they could
220.
That's true.
Like, who knows, right?
Well, it is. Anybody that researches this subject knows that it's way more than 22 million total.
Yeah.
But it's broken up into many, black budget programs, and this
black
is
budget
one
bureaucracy.
This is just one of like a litany, like just tons and tons of black budget projects related to the UFO phenomenon.
Tens of trillions of dollars missing since the beginning of the Reagan administration.
All that money missing, man, and we know that they admit, okay, so it's missing, but really it might not necessarily be missing if they're keeping track of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if there's a fucking black budget, that implies that we're keeping track of the money that's missing.
It's not missing. We just aren't allowed to know where
we
it's
aren't
going.
allowed to know. Yeah, it's redacted information.
Maybe they've been funding really terrible movies. Reagan started that shit, and they're like,
yeah, no, they're funding them to
like,
disinform. Part of the disinformation,
we're just gonna fund some shitty movies.
I still think that like bringing it to the public's eye, the reason behind it is that slow manipulation of the public paradigm to just accept the fact that there is alien life and that we do interact with them. And they might not be alien in the sense we know. Maybe it's all the things we see in movies, you know, all those different, everything you read about it, every pop culture thing, these ideas are kind of put out there for us, and they build on each other, right? Through previous pop culture icons and people that like H.P. Lovecraft would be your first in the horror genre sort of thing to release these ideas of interdimensional species and beings and things with massive forms that exist in a huge void. Like, it got the human psyche thinking in a different way. And I think that that's all part of it, because there is truth to most of it, I think, and that we get given somehow little bits of this truth to tell all of our friends about through art. You know what I mean? It's a manipulation of the base tenet of being human and producing art. You know,
the drip disclosure.
Drip disclosure. Yeah, so, they're giving a little bit to us, and then we'll be ready for it by the time they.
Well, would you agree that this most recent aspect is they're turning up the intensity of it?
Yeah, it's the idea that maybe we're prime. The whole public, like, you got things like ancient astronauts, ancient aliens on Discovery and shit, like places where in the 90s you turn to this for like valid information. You thought you were getting like a real, like, you know, an education about something that was completely factual. And now it's turned towards what some would say, oh, it's entertainment. Well, I don't think it is. I think there's a lot of truth in it. And I think that once we're ready for it, they'll do things like they'll just start talking about it in the news. You know what I mean? They'll just like drop. They didn't even make it. It's not like breaking news, right? It's just like it's an article in the New York Times, but it's not like this like breaking news. The government comes out with UFO. You know, it's like they slowly just like slip it in there.
With this story, there was a video released of a F-18 tracking a target on forward-looking infrared, and it's there's audio with this recording video. It's a video with audio. And the audio is allegedly the pilot's response, and the pilots are clearly, you know, really impressed with this object, and they can't identify it.
So it's out. I mean, that's it. They see it.
Most mainstream sources are saying this video is pretty legit. However, one thing I found interesting is John Lear, who is a big UFO guy.
Yeah.
And also a absolutely world famous pilot.
Yeah.
Came out and said that video is fake.
Yeah. See,
he says the video is real, but the audio is fake.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would make sense. So we're seeing the real video, and he's going, no, there's no way that's not real.
Hey, it kind of sounds like Tom Dog. He's like, hey, bro, like, bro,
what the fuck is that, man?
Look at this thing, bro. Is that one of ours, dude?
No, because the pilots were sitting there talking about it like they know what it is. The pilots might be going, hey, yeah, that's we gotta blah, 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 blah. We can't. What if the pilots are totally in the know? There's just, you know what I mean? That's an idea right there, right? So they have to just cover it up, like.
Yeah, I mean, his main argument is that just the way the pilots are talking is not at all realistic to him. Like, he doesn't think the Air Force pilots would ever.
Well, he was an Air Force pilot, right?
So. Yeah, speak over the radio like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, he obviously knows way more about that than I do.
Yeah, I can't.
But at the same time, like, these pilots are flying out of San Diego, and they just talk like people from San Diego.
Yeah, but how lucky would you be to be a jet pilot, right? From San Diego, and they get fucking stationed in San Diego, man. I mean, I realize there's a big fleet there, but there's shit all over the place. And if you're a fucking jet pilot, I mean, what are the odds of that? You know, I mean, you can pick something maybe later, but I mean, you wouldn't think that someone maybe later on in their career will say they're going to talk like bro, and I don't know.
California vernacular is pretty worldwide. I don't know. In a lot of cities, you know, there's a lot of people. I mean, it's California, but there's a lot of there's a lot of non-regional diction that can end up sounding kind of Californian.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That you'll see across the United States. People try to bland it out, and you'll either sound like you're kind of Texan.
Kind of like the food, right?
Yeah. Like, you know, you're trying to go non-regional, and you'll end up sounding like an intelligent Californian, not a Valley Girl Californian. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
I sound like a Valley Girl.
I don't know. John Lear has interesting theories, though. He goes all the way back into the 90s.
Yeah, and just for our audience, in case they're not familiar with John Lear, he is absolutely, totally a UFO guy, and definitely is on board with UFOs.
And he's very credible.
He's extremely credible.
Like,
Have you heard of a fucking Learjet? Because, John Lear.
Yeah, that's his father.
Yeah, his father exactly designed the Learjet. Like, you're talking about someone who's got more than a reputation to lose and I mean, his 9/11 conspiracy, he's the one that has gone on record as stating there is no way that a pilot that he doesn't think that any real pilot out there right now could have possibly flown a 747 into a building that small. He doesn't believe that it's possible to have hit the target. You know, he's saying that the trajectory with which he would have had 60 seconds or something from the time that it was visible to hone in on it and actually get it. You know, whereas and the angle with which they were coming at it and would have had to come at it.
Yeah, it's more than just. I think that it's more than just hitting it. It's because.
Well, I know I had read a bunch about. He did say that he doesn't believe that the jets themselves, the people, he doesn't believe there are pilots that are good enough to have put the jets into the plane.
Yeah, but it's more than just hitting the buildings with the jet. It's also because of the speed and the angle.
Exactly.
The angle of attack, the speed. You know, it's that combination he thinks is outside of the.
Yeah, it makes.
I don't know. I'm not speaking for him. I'm just that's my understanding. Because I mean, I'm pretty sure that I would hope that a pilot's able to fly his 747 into a big building.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the scale of the.
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, and that's why. I mean, I thought he was pretty.
But it's just that.
But not at the Pentagon. Yeah, that's actually,
that's different.
At the angle that it hit and the rate and everything that. And look at the damage of the Pentagon. It wasn't hit by a fucking jet, man. Like,
yeah, in order to hit where it hit, the jet would have been literally a few feet off the ground.
Yeah, which is impossible.
And there's a thing called ground effect, which makes that impossible.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I kind of had understood about trying to fly it into the building.
Also, there's pictures and there's, light poles, telephone poles and whatnot in the path that the plane would have had to have flown in order to hit the Pentagon that are still standing and undamaged. Not to mention there's like zero plane wreckage.
Yeah. I mean, unless I thought about that, like the idea of the Pentagon being so fragile and so deep, the idea of it being like this big, relatively poorly built, old, like 6 stories deep or 20 stories deep underground military base, and the plane just got sucked up into it. It seems like the only possible logical thing. I'm like, where is the plane, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing that most of the conspiracy theorists say. Like, look at all the videos, and there's just no plane footage there. Like, there's no footage of any aircraft being there. All there is evidence of is destroyed Pentagon.
So it's like there's one video and it only has a few very blurry frames, and it's just all you can really tell is that like whatever the thing that hit the Pentagon it had that stripe like for the airline.
Yeah.
It had a paint job similar.
Yeah.
But it could have just been a cruise missile that they painted to look like that, right?
Or a piece outside. I mean, who knows, man?
And there was tons of video recorded, but only these 3 frames of this really terrible recording has ever been released to the public. It's exactly like the Las Vegas shooting where we have zero footage of this.
Oh, dude, that shit doesn't make any sense to me. The timeline, the amount of rounds that this... Okay, so he's using a sniper rifle, right?
Well, I think he was using an AR-15.
An AR-15,
which I wouldn't call a sniper.
It's not a sniper rifle. The range is severely limited. If that's the case, if it was an AR-15 with a 223.
I'm not sure about the.
But he would have had to fire a lot of rounds, is all I'm saying, in a matter of what the cops say 10 minutes. There was 10 minutes, like 10:45 or 10:55 to 11:05, right? That was when the shooting occurred, 10:45 to 10:55, something like that. 10 minutes. So he had to get all those 600 rounds downrange in 10 minutes. As a sole guy, being at the same time accosted, because within the 3 to 6 minutes or something, he was the security was already knocking on the door.
That was the original story. That's not the story anymore.
That's not the story anymore.
They've changed the story like 3 times, and right now, the last I understood, the official story is that he shot for like 10 minutes or whatever, and then just committed suicide for no reason. And then like 45 minutes later, the cops showed up at his room.
See, and
fired and opened. There were shots fired by the police in the hotel room.
Yeah, like so.
45 minutes after he supposedly committed suicide. It's
the idea that there was only one guy shooting seems prepreposterous to me. Just looking at the numbers.
Where's all the surveillance tape in the fucking capital of surveillance cameras? This is the fucking capital. Dude robs the casino a couple weeks ago. Shit was on the fucking. We saw everything that went down immediately. You know, and we don't have that fucking kind of transparency, man. All that shit's being hid.
It's so fishy, and
it is fishy as fuck.
The most fishy thing about the Las Vegas thing is right after it happened, the media was pushing it hard, and then everybody started poking holes in it, and then they started changing their story, and then as soon as the narrative started to unravel, as soon as they started changing the story and stuff, the all mainstream media just forgot about
Completely forgets about it. Exactly. That's standard fucking
It's the worst
right?
mass shooting in like modern American history, and the media covered it for like a week.
Yeah. Oh man, unless you got to count Waco in that too, though. You know.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
crazy. Yeah. Well,
is it worse? It's not worse. It's fewer people.
Fewer people? How many people died in the Vegas shooting?
Well, I forget that, like 50 or something.
I thought it was 50. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's something on the order of 50, but it was hundreds that were wounded.
Yeah,
74,
that's what I'm talking about.
74 Branch Davidians. So Janet Reno. No, I don't want to politicize that. Actually, that's ATF holds the record for the largest mass shooting in
modern. And notice I carefully said modern because
modern. Yeah. You know, if we went back, no. Definitely.
If you're counting it by people, number of fatalities, then it sounds like the Waco, Texas was the worst. But by sheer number of wounded, then so they're on par pretty much.
Like this guy had to have just sat there and just racked fucking rounds out of that firearm. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It seems like there would have been a lot of rounds put down range, man.
Yeah, well the thing is
58 people, by the way.
Yeah, so thanks for that.
546 injured.
So 546 injured. I mean, so if you're measuring it by injuries, that's way worse than Waco.
Almost 600 people that were injured or
that sucks, man.
You know, but that's what it doesn't seem plausible for one.
You remember
injuries.
Waco, right? That shit was talked about on the news for months.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it's still brought up in classes.
This was talked about really intensely and then all of a sudden forgotten.
Fired more than 1,100 rounds in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
that's
that's
crazy.
That's not that impressive.
You could
do that. You could do that with a semi-automatic rifle. But this guy apparently used a bump stock, which is, if anybody's ever shot a bump stock, like that's the worst fucking possible thing to use for what he was trying to do if he was trying to be effective.
Yeah. It seems like there's a question should be asked in every regard. You know what I mean? Like, that is literally around a second if he fired 600 rounds.
Yeah, but that's not hard to do with an AR-15.
No, it's not hard to do, but I'm saying there's no time. He literally couldn't have been doing anything else. You know what I'm saying? Like, he would have had to have been firing the whole 10 minutes. You know, there would have been no, like, I don't know if there's any footage of it actually happening, if there was people capturing it while it happened.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So is he literally pop,
well, it's
pop,
just, that's
pop.
a whole nother rabbit hole because there's bursts, you know?
Yeah.
And then pauses and bursts.
Yeah.
And I just don't even want to go into that rabbit hole right now, but
yeah, no. I mean, the logistics seem crazy behind one guy. If it seems plausible,
it's very questionable. The video the audio and the video makes it very questionable that it's one location where the shots are coming from.
Yeah.
But it's a whole debate, you know, so I don't want to.
Yeah.
I just don't want to even go into that. It's just too deep.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. There's so many aspects of it. I mean, I don't know.
Why not? We could clear it all up.
I don't know. Well, I don't really feel any particular way. I don't know if there's much of a debate. I mean, I feel like the facts aren't all there, and that every last aspect of it has to be called into question.
Where's the fucking videotape at?
Once we aren't told the proper story and we know the narrative is fucked, everything gets called into question.
Yeah, where's the fucking videotape from the 100,000 cameras that should have saw
That's what I'm saying.
That
this is a huge
like,
event.
we should know exactly what the fuck is going on.
It shouldn't be that
multiple
hard.
different levels, man. Like, and we don't have that. We're not going to get it.
And we know that everyone's footage was taken. Anyone who had footage of it, it's part of the federal investigation. Like, guys who had even the organization themselves, like, they had to give up all their laptops. Guys who were filming it and had laptops gave their laptops to the FBI. When they came back, they're fucking all wiped clean.
Yep.
Like, that happened. That's fucking for real shit. If you were there and they questioned you, they took your phone, and then when you get it back, it has none of your information on it. None of your pictures, it's a wiped clean. You know what I mean? That's fucking crazy.
The other interesting thing is that the top floors of the Mandalay Bay are owned by a Saudi royalty. And just right after that shooting, there was that crazy quote-unquote corruption crackdown in Saudi Arabia, where they got like a bunch of the really powerful Saudi princes, So, I mean, in my mind, it's really hard to think that those two events are totally unrelated.
Yep, and it's easy for the media to make them seem so completely fucking unrelated, and you know what I mean, right? I mean, they can just, it's like the wool is pulled over our fucking eyes no matter what.
Fucking Saudis, man, I'm telling you.
There's a lot of conspiracy with the certain political organizations being really tied to the Saudis, right? I mean, or even just people within politics.
Oh yeah,
having their ties.
They spend a lot of money in our political system.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I assume that it's probably, you got to think about it from another nation's point of view, like America with the media and the way we all get to vote. Like they're like, every other nation's going, dude, if we could just change the way the American people feel, you know what I mean? Like to the way we want them to feel. I mean, that's got to be on other nations' minds as disinformation tactics against us. I mean, it could be that simple. In our own nation does it. We know we're all convinced that our own nation does it. Why wouldn't everyone else?
Oh yeah, no, the Saudis are.
I think thinking that the ruling elite of the United States is somehow different and separate from the ruling elite of Saudi Arabia or the ruling elite of any other country.
Exactly.
Is poor thinking.
So they're all trying.
It's not logical.
But are they in line with each other? Is the question.
Well, I personally think that they're factionalized.
So it's like you made that we were talking about how politics are like the WWE. So it's like you have like Monday Night Snackdown, and then fucking I mean you have the different shows for
that's a good
different factions, man, and that's how it works.
Or it's like Game of Thrones. You have the Lannisters and the Starks, and you have the different. There are like conspiracies, but it's not one grand conspiracy of all of them. But they're not. It's not like the factions line up exactly with the nation states. Yeah.
That I see what you're saying. So you could have people from whatever random. The nation is irrelevant, but the person themselves as an elite.
Within the elite class, there's factions.
Yeah.
And they feud or work together to different degrees depending on the factions. I mean.
So all of it, and maybe that's the thing, even the way our minds work right now, it's all distraction, right? They slowly feed us. I mean, I know I keep going back to that drip. I can't help it, man. Like everything we're talking about, maybe it's contrived. Maybe they want us to be right where we're at right now.
I would say so.
And how are we supposed to break free of that? What's the key? What's the answer? Entheogens?
Yeah. To some degree, possibly.
I mean, is it does the liberation of the individual mind, from itself and the constraints of itself, does that, I mean, it's got to help, but how do we organize against something that's so big and vast, and what are we supposed to do?
Their main approach is divide and conquer.
So just try to not pay attention and be divided so easily by the topics that come up, huh?
Yeah, where two or more are gathered, there's a power in the process of all of that.
Yeah, well, the idea
there's just a power in the process of like-minded people coming together and being on the same plane.
So take your local news with a grain of salt would be the starting point, right? To lessen the influence of disinformation itself.
Yeah, we'll take all news with a grain of salt. All news,
yeah. But the ones you're paying attention to, whatever news source you're paying attention to, question fucking everything, right? That's where I think that's a good lesson. Question everything, the Socratic way,
Socrates.
Question everything. Yeah.
Think for yourself.
So I was waiting. So going back to the crazy rocket launch light show in the sky that I saw, I was waiting for people on the internet to be like it was fake. And it didn't really happen because I personally saw it in real time with my own eyes.
Oh,
but guess what? It never happened. There wasn't a bunch of people on the internet claiming that it was a fake thing.
Yeah, you could almost say that that's a way to verify other things that right? That could be real that we say are fake.
I don't know. It was just an observation.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I know that there are people who think it's related to other things, right? Like the idea of it's not fake, but it just falls back in the sky. Or that's the old classic argument there, right? That it just falls back into the Earth's atmosphere.
Oh,
it goes to space and then falls right back.
The rockets. He's talking. You're talking about the rocket launches, right?
Yeah. And so all of them are fake in a sense.
A popular theory on the internet that the rocket launches are fake and they just shoot up and then they arc over and splash down on the ocean. And NASA pretends like it went to space.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows, right? I mean, there's guys, I know there's footage of people on like flights watching rocket launches and stuff through the clouds, and the people that are analyzing the trajectory of it are the ones that are saying, look, man, the line shoots out into fucking the ocean. Like these things just shoot out in the ocean. They're so convinced too, you know what I mean? And I'm not an expert enough to fucking know. I'm like, well, grain of sand, man. You're just another grain of sand to me. That's how I have to.
I think the thing with space is we as a civilization have this problem where all our information about space all comes through, the national space agencies, and the main one is NASA. And so NASA has a monopoly on data about space.
Yeah. And so we have no firsthand knowledge. We have no way to verify it for ourselves. Anything, right? I mean,
right.
There are people that suppose and believe firmly that it's liquid, right? That everything is liquid. There's no the space itself is a liquid.
The firmament there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't like the religious ties of certain things, because like there's a lot of the arguments that, I mean, yeah, you're always going to get people that have religious take on it and they use it all, and it all boils down to God, for them. But the firmament has like that, it is religious connotations, I think. But the idea that it's liquid, that the space isn't just this vacuum, you know what I mean? And that dark matter doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a nothing. If you have a nothing and it's addressable, then it is a something. And that the idea of a vacuum doesn't make sense. Instead, the idea of a super liquid, a super fluid, being able to exert the same vacuum-like properties. But it's not a vacuum, supposedly. You know what I mean? That you can get leaks in your spacesuit and you actually have water. It's like a liquid, they say. I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I question it all because I don't have any real information sources. We got NASA.
Yeah, I mean, we don't. We have, NASA and SpaceX and the European Space Agency and the Chinese Space Agency, but they're all...
And the Russians.
NASA is just... absolutely. The
and
Russians.
The Indians too. Actually, India's got a pretty bitchin' space program, man.
How many Vimanas do they have?
How many what do they have?
Vimanas.
Vimanas what?
I don't know what that is.
You guys don't watch Ancient Aliens?
No, sorry. I mean, I know that it exists, and I've seen the people on it sometimes.
Aliens.
In the Bhagavad Gita, the ancient gods in India would fight in these giant flying cities called Vimanas.
And then we would see them in the clouds, right? We see the remnants of the battles and huge things exploding and shit. Yeah, that seems crazy. It all seems crazy, though. Like, really, the idea of space travel itself, for people to really conceptualize going to space, I don't think it's really, I think it's like big numbers. We think we have a grasp on them because we can kind of, write some shit down, calculators and such, but really it's just beyond the scope.
So on this idea of, NASA being fake or whatever, one thing that's interesting to me is a vacuum is an incredibly good insulator. I have this stainless steel water bottle, and it's insulated with a vacuum in between two layers of stainless steel.
Yeah.
And my ice water stays cold for days.
Yeah.
Hella for days. My ice water is cold.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring that up is because the way a spacesuit, so like astronauts in space have to deal with these really dramatic changes in temperature. So if they're in the sun, then their spacesuit's really, really hot, like deadly hot.
Yeah.
If they're in the cold, then it's super, super cold, right? And so according to NASA, and they have diagrams and schematics of all this, their spacesuits, will either heat or cool the atmosphere inside the spacesuit to compensate for the extreme heat or cold outside the spacesuit.
Okay.
But the problem is if you want to cool something, you have to use a cooling loop and you have to radiate the heat out. But space is this incredible insulator. So if you're in a spacesuit and you're trying to pump heat out of the spacesuit to keep the astronaut cool, you have to pump that heat into space somehow. But it's really difficult to radiate heat into space.
Yeah, because it's a vacuum, right? I mean, isn't that the...
Well, because a vacuum is incredibly good at insulating. It's an incredible
So
good...
it just holds that heat around you, right?
Right. It would be like being all insulated. It's like taking your refrigerator and wrapping it with insulation. It's not going to work.
Yeah. yeah.
Because on the back of your refrigerator, it radiates heat. And in order for that cooling loop to work, that heat has to be radiated out into the air. And it works pretty well because the air is, you can radiate heat into air pretty well. It's not that difficult.
The air gets hot.
A vacuum is a totally different story.
So there's a lot of people, and they're mostly amateurs, or they have, minor degrees. They're not doctorates or masters in physics or anything. And they will presuppose these things like that, burning in space is not really possible. The idea of the rockets and the way they work. I mean, I know there's an explanation. There's always an explanation, but it's invalid enough for people to question it that are in the field, amateurs that are in the field to question it. And I get that that's the whole point, is that they just don't know. But it seems really, really convenient, you know what I mean, to have this like, well, we know because we're educated and we have this knowledge source that you don't have, and then they can spoon feed you whatever they want. We can't know. And when someone posits something like, dude, you can't possibly do that in space, he's discredited, and immediately every future prospect and job he has is gone and all that shit. So maybe that would obviously discourage other people from coming out and speaking against it. They're like physicists that say, no, man, we can't really do that. I don't think we could do that. And they're laughed at by the rest of their field, and they never get another job in it. Like,
if you don't push that status quo, man.
Exactly. Like, it's like, well, because they're trying to question things that we've already done, like the Van Allen radiation belt and propulsion in space in a vacuum, all these different things that they're saying can't really occur in a vacuum, like trying to release heat or regulate temperature. They're like, no, man, it doesn't work that way. Like, people always have, and they have what seems like more coherent arguments to posit than the people defending it, because it's that same situation where the people that are defending it are just so certain that nobody really, that's a true expert, steps up.
Well, the problem is that the people defending the mainstream view of things, their argument always just boils down to, well, this guy is an expert and he says that's the way it is.
Yeah, that's what I don't like. I have a hard time with that. I'm like, well, I like amateur scientists. I like to, I like the idea that somebody's thinking outside the box, and they've trained themselves enough and not gone with the status quo enough to question
somebody's
it.
asking questions.
Asking
Science used
questions.
to be about asking questions. That's how fucking a lot of good discoveries were made, significant ones,
Yeah, and
now it's not like that.
Tangible.
The second you question the status quo or the fucking the globally pushed narrative, you're fucked, man.
Maybe we're not that smart, and everything we've come up with has been alien technology that's dropped on us. Like, we literally haven't fucking come up with shit. We just tinkered with it a little bit. Like, like, they're like, oh, you think you came up with a wheel? No, you fucking retards were trying to haul shit on your backs. Like, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm don't really buy the whole alien technology like being introduced into our culture or our society thing, because I know the history of, like, because they always say night vision, fiber optics, the like
but
transistors.
You're seeing the lineage of it.
But I know the whole lineage of all those things.
So what about, like,
it's not,
yeah, even all the way back to like the initial electricity
you can trace
discoveries
the history of those inventions back 100 years. Like, this led to that, which led to that. It's all very logical.
Is there any place where there's like a gap in the scientific knowledge and then a massive discovery though that made a huge difference? Like the transistor or whatever. Did the guy was it a laboratory? Bell Labs, right? Came up with a bunch of shit. I know back in the day, like, was it like a lab where a bunch of people were thinking about it and all? Because that's the one where it's like,
I mean, the one that I think is especially definitely not alien technology would be night vision. Yeah, that's just a cathode ray tube.
Well, we're so far in. Yeah, that's
transistors are interesting because they came up with those semiconductors, but it's not the theory. The science behind it was well established.
Like, that's what. Well, even Tesla had. I read a quote where someone had said something about using his patents. Hey, that guy's using your patent, and he said, well, he's doing good work. Let him keep going. The idea of sharing knowledge and information, and that it was all there. It was just about people using existing information to create new things that filled a need that maybe was an unaddressed need. We didn't know we needed a radio. We didn't, but military application for that. Can you imagine 1890 being like, if you're a cavalry in 1890, you know what I mean? You're the most advanced. Like when we think of the Civil War, that was 30 years before that, you know? So you're thinking like they're more advanced. They got better firearms. Imagine having a fucking radio. You know what I mean? Like, it would be turn of the century radio. Like, Jesus, that was the military advantages were so unquestionable. You know, they were obviously there, but it took some people making these things and then making a radio with them, right? I mean, I don't know the lineage. You know more about how that all went down. You know what I mean? I just know that they exist and somebody made them at some point. You know, I know that's not enough.
Yeah, I mean, some people think it's alien technology, and I personally just don't see the evidence for that.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's definitely this huge...
Could that be the whole point of the New York Times thing, is that they realize that the people will believe it, and it could be completely bullshit? We're putting 22 million, which people infer as 220 million, into this government program to find UFOs, and then they're not doing that with it at all. Like, they're just doing whatever the fuck they want, and like people are so cool with it. Like
22 million, it's nothing.
Well, yeah.
It's
so
nothing.
we infer that it's 220 million is nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like until you're hitting the billions, you're really not looking at very much. Like in that sort of a sense, but. It would be easy to just say a certain amount and say we're doing this. And if the public is all on board, they're like, hell yeah, we're researching UFOs. Them fucking things are real. And the government's going, yeah, they're real. Probably, you know, we have no interest in discovering that. We are more interested in whatever the fuck we're doing, you know?
I just don't see the motivation. I mean, what's
to gain?
Is
it a truth disclosure? Is that what is their gain? You know, is it truth disclosure? Just the idea of someone actually wanting to tell us, slowly getting it out. Is that too far-fetched?
I'm not sure. I understand your question.
Well, is there someone do the people in the government, are there factions that actually want the people to have information?
Probably. I don't see why not. I would, if I had to guess, and this is all just speculation.
Yeah.
But if I had to guess, I would say that the vast majority of factions don't give a shit about the people.
Yeah.
But it's probably likely that there's some people that are on our side. I mean,
like Kennedy and Abe Lincoln. No, I'm just
go
through all the people that get shot.
Change our fucking side, man. I don't want them to shoot me. No, we're not important. We're not even pawns. Really, fuck, man.
Senator Harry Reid found dead of just
the thing I don't get is it's like, why didn't they, if they're going to disclose aliens to us, which is what they're trying to do, why didn't they bring some, they say they have material they've recovered. Why not show us pictures of it? Why not something new? We've seen pictures of UFOs from fighter jets.
Yeah, so why not bring a piece of one of them motherfuckers out? Bring me a finger of an alien.
Right.
Just show us and be like, look, dude, we did.
Or just material, or even just material. Yeah. Because they said in the article they recovered material. So let's see the material.
Let's see the material. Is this really are you calling it material to be mysterious, or is it just a fucking wing off of some Russian plane that you saw, you know, and realize, it was a UFO before we realized what it was? Like, how does that work? You know what I'm saying? Like in the UFO community, like when they're researching it and trying to fund research for it, how do you even begin to look for UFOs? You know what I mean? I've been given millions of dollars to look for UFOs. Do they use observatories and they link in? And I mean, eyewitness. What's the protocol there? I mean,
well, you mean the government, or do you mean?
Well,
the government has tons of data that's useful in looking for UFOs because they have tons of radar, and you know, there's a long history of UFOs are tracked on radar. This happens all the time, and so just a NORAD, you know, probably sees UFOs coming into the atmosphere or whatever all the time. If that's really a thing and UFOs are real, then they probably have tons of radar data that is not available to the public.
Oh, no shit. That's probably,
And then on top of that, they have these spy satellites that have tons of really, really absolutely state-of-the-art imaging systems, infrared, visible light, X-ray. Again, this is all... UFOs come up on this stuff. Like, there's a long history of UFOs being visible on infrared. That video from the F-18 of the UFO that was released with the New York Times article was infrared. Also, I mean, X-ray, X-ray imaging technology is way harder to get for the public than infrared, but there's a whole a lot of supposed eyewitnesses that say that like it comes up on that X-ray imagery too.
Well, and to know that there's probably just hordes of information regarding the UFO conspiracy. Like you're saying, if they've got all these means and they pop up and they're admitting it, then there's hordes of information that we don't have. And like, it almost seems like their whole fucking thing is like, yeah, it's power play. You guys know, everyone knows that they're real, and we're going to tell you when we fucking feel like it. Right? I mean, that's what it starts to feel that way. Like, why can't they just give us this fucking information and let people figure it out? Like, the more minds on it, if it's a mystery, if they're mystery real UFOs that we don't know, the more minds on it, the better. The more people see it and the more in the public mind it is, the more some like random savant is going to see it and figure it out and be like, no, that's not unidentified. Look, check that out. This is what it is. Like, what is it's just like a sheer fucking power play. Like, they're just trying to just say, look, there's all this information and you can say that you want it and you can know as much as you want.
The government's whole gimmick is that they're necessary for protection. The government is a protection racket.
They're the fucking mob, dude.
Yeah, they have to protect that.
And so a lot of people think that the whole truth embargo, as some call it, is just because the government doesn't want to admit that there's these things that are probably most likely extraterrestrial that they can't protect us from.
Yeah, and so you're right. They have an interest in us needing them.
Right. So because we're, as taxpayers, give them tons of money supposedly to be protected. And so if we find out, the Earth's being visited by extraterrestrials and maybe they're not so nice sometimes, why isn't the government protecting us from them?
Because we just can't.
Especially if you talk about the abduction phenomenon, right? So if it turns out that UFOs are real, and then it also turns out that abductions are real, the abduction phenomenon, people supposedly being abducted out of their bedrooms by gray aliens, then that's definitely within like what the government should be protecting us from, right?
We'll see how flaccid they are.
Being literally kidnapped and tortured by gray beings from outer space.
Yeah.
And if the government's totally incapable of doing that, then why the fuck are we paying them taxes?
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean,
I'm just like, why the fuck are we paying them taxes anyway?
But see, because you understand that it's a protection racket, but most people don't understand that. They think that we really need to be protected from Russia, and we really need to be protected from North Korea, and we really need the government to do that protection for us. And so that's how they rationalize paying them money.
Yeah, at 10 times the spending of the fucking rest of the world. I mean, more than, we spend so much on it. It's crazy. That's what it all comes down to, maybe. Who knows? They want your dollar.
Yeah.
They want your dollar, and they want that's it though. I mean, if they continue to be necessary in our minds, right? So the government has a vested interest in perpetuating their own perceived necessity.
And so they keep extraterrestrials a secret because they are powerless to protect us from them.
Yeah, that would make sense. So they're
or they're creating the fear around a threat. And that's where all these tens of trillions of dollars have gone into technology like this to create fake aliens. Well,
the idea if there's something out there that they can't protect you from.
Yeah, but the problem with that theory is that if that were the case, then they'd be all over the news all the time since like the 50s, then the 60s, all over the news saying, oh my God, there's these gray aliens, they're kidnapping everybody, we need all your tax dollars. But all of a sudden, that narrative has just started, like, literally in the past few weeks.
Yeah, well,
before that,
they wouldn't have been able to do that, though.
That's not real. That's a joke. That's fake. You're crazy.
See, but what I was going to say is that they could fall right in hand. If the government had an alien issue that they couldn't address, so they don't want to tell people because then the people will feel unsafe and the government's unnecessary, wouldn't they want to create just enough fear around a potential threat? You know what I mean? Like, they're either a real threat and they're going to same with like North Korea. They're either a real threat and they're going to fucking bomb us and there's nothing we can do. or they're not really a threat and we're blowing them up to be so that people want to continue to give you money.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean?
That's
it's
a really good point.
If it goes either way, they could be flaccid or a danger, and the government still wants to make you think they're just enough of a danger to where we're protecting you from
maybe what's going on is that they're looking for the next boogeyman. And so they
check the public reaction.
So terrorists were really like Islamic extremist terrorists were a really great boogeyman. Yeah. They got the Patriot Act passed. They got tons and tons of funding. They got an entire new draconian, authoritarian,
and that
dystopian
lives,
agency created, the Department of Homeland Security.
Yep.
And so maybe like after all these years, the Islamic terrorist threat has kind of run its course, and people are just so jaded that they're just not afraid of Islamic terrorists anymore.
Yeah, you know.
And so they're trying Russia, and people are not buying Russia. They're trying North Korea, but people are not buying North Korea either.
Yeah.
And so they're like running out of possible boogeymen to replace the Islamic terrorists, and so maybe they've just finally got to aliens.
Finally got to it, yeah. The one that, no shit. And that's scary because then there could be so much like, what if the idea of it being like there's either aliens or they've or there aren't, you know what I mean? Well, what about the idea that the government could have aliens and could also fabricate alien stories on top of those aliens to where there's like fake aliens that don't really exist, but conspiracies around them because there's government organizations that are able to easily manipulate the Twitter sphere and the Facebook sphere and all that shit, you know what I mean? Like they can create conspiracies, and then that would complete, like it's like that. How the fuck can we know? How the fuck, you know what I mean? Like there's a real alien life, but we've also created all these conspiracies about shit that's not real, like Syrian draconian fucking reptiles and shit, you know what I mean? Like, you know, who knows how many of those could be? How would you be able to even cherry pick the ones that are not completely fucking shit?
The best disinformation is built around grains of truth.
They pepper in. That's right, huh?
So even if the whole aliens and UFOs meme is bullshit, then there's probably some truth to it nonetheless.
Yeah, well, I mean, you get the Fermi paradox, you know. I like the idea, one podcaster I was listening to recently, the idea that we are the only race. We are the first. There has to be a first of intelligent. If intelligent life is a thing in the universe, there had to be a first at some point, and we're it, man. We're lonely. We're alone. We're the only fucking creation or the only existing life form of any intelligence in the history of the universe. We are the first and maybe the only. It's a scary idea.
I mean, it's a scary idea, but it doesn't seem, it's definitely a possibility, but it doesn't seem like a likelihood to me.
Well, that's the Fermi paradox, is that once you start calculating the likelihood of life, then the number of it having got in touch with us at some point becomes overwhelming. You know, the idea, the numbers.
The Fermi paradox is that okay, yeah, sorry, you're go ahead.
That's one of the components of it, is that if life does exist, that it had to have made contact with other life at some point. Like we
haven't been contacted.
Exactly. So there's a paradox in that.
The problem with the Fermi paradox, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, yeah, go ahead. You're good.
But it's just, to me, the Fermi paradox is absolutely stupid because it's the most egocentric thing, because it's assuming that aliens are communicating with each other using Earth technology.
Yeah, exactly. It's human bias.
We don't even know. Maybe there's better ways to communicate than electromagnetic waves.
Yep.
Maybe you can communicate with gravity waves. Maybe there's some sort of quantum communication possible.
Yep.
On top of that, our electromagnetic wave communications are so focused on certain areas of the spectrum. As far as I know, we have little to no like terahertz frequency communications.
Yeah.
How do we know aliens aren't communicating on terahertz frequencies?
Yeah, because we build our whole spectrum off what we can.
Yeah, just because absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Yeah, exactly.
And just because in the spectrum we use for communication, there's no alien TV shows coming up, doesn't mean that if we if we had alien communication equipment, we would pick up the alien TV stations.
Yep. Well, and then, I mean, that's the thing, is that it's so human bias that we really can't, I mean, the numbers can say what they say. And that's what I guess the numbers say. It's first of all, it posits that it's infinite. It posits that the universe is infinite. So there's a lot of things that it presupposes right there, like the universe is. Well, I've read some theories that state that the universe.
I don't think the Fermi. I don't think the Fermi
it does
paradox requires that, because if you just look at the known universe, it's plenty.
It can be applied to
statistically
the known universe.
guarantee intelligent alien life.
Yeah.
If you
Well, and you get into the conspiracies there around like what physical life itself. We know life as life. We know life as the building blocks and the carbon-based, all these things that happen in the chains of reactions that occur that make life. We can't even begin to posit or think that there's something else, something beyond just physical life that we're looking for. Like, you get into crazy talk. Once you get into that, you're getting interdimensional beings and spiritual beings and things that don't exist in a third dimensional realms. The idea of a two-dimensional being can't perceive the third dimension. They can't. You can influence that ant. Let's posit that it's in a two-dimensional world. It's not, but let's say it is, and it can't possibly even begin to understand what happens in my three-dimensional world. It's on a piece of paper, and I'm moving that piece of paper. It won't even fucking know. You know what I mean? That's that fourth dimension that we can't interact with, but that doesn't mean it can't interact with us.
Yeah, and it's feeling the forces from you moving the paper around, and it's trying to develop scientific theories about
exactly
where that those forces come from, and they come up with space-time and dark matter.
And there will be observable
next
patterns.
Time you think about stepping on a fucking ant, don't be an asshole. Yeah. Cool, so.
Be Buddhist. No.
All right. Well.
Yeah, I'm done.
It's been a long conversation.
It's been a fun journey.
I think it's time to wrap it up, though.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm going to wrap it up.